Before I begin, let me just start by acknowledging the person, my hero. We all have them, I'm sure, but my wife Shirley joining me tonight, and she's my hero. Why don't you sit down? Throw those crutches away.
I would like to.
But I've often said this, and I mean it sincerely, that if you really want to hear the stories of heroism, don't just talk to the veterans who have experienced it, talk to their wives and their lovers and their girlfriends and their families who have had to endure those invisible scars that Judge Russell talked about. They're also heroic. I'd like to begin with a little story tonight, and it involves your imagination. Imagine, if you will, that I'm about 60 pounds lighter and I have hair. I once had a basketball scholarship to the University of Buffalo. I didn't exactly capitalize on that opportunity, and that's how I got drafted. But the first time I got wounded, I got shot in the calf. And I went to the doctor who was treating me, and I said, "Doctor, is this going to ruin my basketball career?" Because I did anticipate that I was going to come back home and pick up where I left off. And he said, no, the bullet is buried deep in your calf. We're not even going to take it out. It's too deep. You won't even know it's there. The second time I got shot, it was a little less gracious. I got shot in the butt. And again, I asked the doctor the same thing. I said, "Doctor, am I going to be able to continue my basketball career?" And he said, "Yeah, this wound isn't going to affect your basketball playing at all. Just don't sit on the bench very much." The third time I got shot, it was a little more serious, and I knew that. I got shot twice in the knee. I broke my leg. I lost a kneecap. And I was in danger of losing the leg. And the doctor came by, and I knew the answer, but still I had to ask. I said, "Doctor, is this going to affect my basketball playing career?" He put his arm around me and he said, "Son, we talked to your coach. You never had a career." Now, I tell you that story, that little morality play, because it's an apt introduction to the mission that my friend Rhonda Frederick has asked me to perform tonight. It is so because it speaks to the desire of veterans, the men and women who serve this nation, who are damaged in ways that they don't even know, who come home from war desperate to feel normal again. We saw a great tragedy of that desire to play out in an amusement park not far from here, with a young man who desperately wanted to feel normal again. And I've had a long-standing and somewhat symbiotic relationship with people and with Rhonda in my professional career. And everyone knows that it would be impossible to say no to Rhonda or to people in general. And to Jim Bowles, a wonderful leader in this community who has done so much for disability acceptance and the disabled. But that's one of the reasons that I chose to come here tonight, based on the abiding respect that I have for the personalities and the organization and the way they perform their mission. A mission that involves making special people feel very normal. I watched with admiration as People Inc. created nurturing, caring environments for a wide range of special people in Western New York. Tonight, though, we deal with an even more special category to me. A more special category of our friends and neighbors, our sons and daughters, husbands and wives. Tonight we deal with disability caused by war. It's very fitting that we do so tonight with our hearts heavy with the loss of the 30 Americans who were recently killed in Afghanistan. It's even more fitting at the prospect of many more Western New Yorkers soon to return from war with varying disabilities. In my war, I was among a minority of soldiers who were part of the branch of the Army called the infantry. The root of the word infantry is, as you might imagine, infant. And it traces its roots back through antiquity to the Roman legions, who would take their infant soldiers, their brand new soldiers, and put them in the forward lines of battle. The idea was to weary the enemy as they fought through this first line of infant soldiers, softening them up for the veterans in the rear of the column. And while the methods and means of killing each other have undergone dramatic evolution over the centuries, I've got to tell you that it wasn't a lot more different than it was when I was in the infantry. We were the sharp end of the military spear, the first to fight and the last to rest. And contrary to what many people in this community believe, I was a very reluctant soldier. In my war, we were drafted to fight. And like the Romans, we put the draftees, for the most part, in the infantry. We were young, we were strong, we were eager to prove ourselves. All that I know of war and all that I have heard of peace make it incomprehensible to think that I was ever naive enough to fight in one war and beyond the realm of possibility that I would fight or be part of another. But back then we were, as they say now, Army strong. We thought we were up to any task and we could defeat any enemy. What they forgot to tell us, though, was that there was another side. There was another army. The enemy, we called them. And they felt pretty much the same way we did. So something had to give in the clash between them and us. And clash it did, many times over. More than 58,000 Americans and more than 1 million Vietnamese were killed in my war. Additionally, there were more than 300,000 GIs, mostly those hapless infantry soldiers I was part of, who were wounded badly enough to be evacuated from the battlefield. One might think that soldiers go off to war imbued with that idea that they might suffer, they might be maimed, and they might die. While that possibility perched on one's shoulder like some deranged parrot, pecking everlastingly at one's eye, most soldiers dismiss or deny even the possibility of catastrophe. Otherwise, that overwhelming fear would make it impossible for a soldier to perform in the candid heat of combat. So the great idea of the youngest going into the fight was not exactly the greatest idea when the blood started to flow. And that's what makes disability caused in war different. I would never seek to diminish the challenges that anyone faces struggling with disability. But in war, disability comes at a point in time when we are at our greatest. We are at our peak. when we are strong and confident and brave, we are not ready to lose a limb or to lose our sight or to lose our sanity. Those injuries just weren't supposed to happen to us. We believed the propaganda that being the best we can be, and we believed that no matter how surreal, no matter how fantastic, no matter how far from the world that we knew combat took us, that we might actually one day be normal again. But in the blink of an eye, or the detonation of a landmine, or in the slight pull of a trigger, life is altered for all time. And the soldier is introduced to a new definition of normal. Instead of teaching a child to throw a curveball, the disabled veteran learns how to use a hook. Instead of using a driver on a golf course, the wounded Marine must master the controls of a vehicle specially adapted to his need. Instead of watching an instructor lecturing in a college classroom, the combat nurse spends her time struggling through post-combat depression. And all the while, these and hundreds of thousands of other wounded souls wonder, what happened to me? What happened to the person I used to know? Disability is even more prevalent as battlefield medicine continues its advance. Injuries that would have surely killed soldiers in my war are now survivable, thanks to the advancements in technique, equipment, and the medical skill of our personnel. Some of those injuries are physical, some are emotional. All are real and all are disabling. In my case, I came home struggling to feel like the same guy who earned that basketball scholarship. When that goal was no longer attainable, I strived instead to see if I could drink more than my buddies. I did that with such success that I was on the verge of losing hope, losing my family, and losing my mind. I was rescued by a caring and compassionate professional at the Buffalo VA named Barbara Wolfram. With her experience, with her expertise, I was put on a course that allowed me, years later, to be there for people and to be there with you this evening. Many years ago, I was introduced what is probably the greatest anti-war song ever written. It's called "The Band Played Waltzing Matilda." And it is the sad tale of a young Australian sent off to fight in World War I. At a horrific battle on the Crimea, the lad loses both legs to a Turkish artillery shell. It is after that battle that the young man realizes, I never knew there were worse things than dying. The man tells of his homecoming then, and for that, I'll use the exact lyrics from the song. So they collected the cripples, the wounded, the maimed, and they shipped us back home to Australia. The legless, the armless, the blind, the insane, those proud wounded warriors of Suvla. And as our ship pulled into Circular Quay, I looked at the place where my legs used to be, and thank Christ there was no one there waiting for me. To grieve, to mourn, or to pity. And while the band played Waltzing Matilda, they carried us down the gangway, but nobody cheered. They just stood there and stared. and they turned their faces away. To all of you here at People Inc., to all of you who had anything to do with this wonderful exhibit, to all of you veterans who serve other veterans so proudly, so nobly, you never turned your faces away. You've always turned toward the need. You've always given the hand up. And you've always been in the fore of making sure that people feel and get to act normal in the face of overwhelming odds. Thank you for that understanding. Thank you for that caring. And thank you for being friends to all of our veterans.